Hello, welcome back to our channel. My name is Nikita Lambert. I'm a validation coach that loves to spend my time validating, educating, and empowering people who grew up with narcissistic parents or, caregivers. And then recently, myself and a friend, Asha, we have taken a deep dive into high control groups, especially the ICOC, otherwise known as the International Churches of Christ. A couple of weeks ago, we kicked off our series. And every few weeks or so, we will be tackling and discussing at length a different aspect of what it is, the experience that you have being a part of this church. So today we're going to be talking about all things kind of revolving around relationships. So starting with purity culture, what it's like to like someone, date someone, be engaged, the marriage aspect, and then even into having and raising children. There's a lot to unpack there. So settle in. This is going to be probably another decently, a decent length discussion, several hours quite possibly. But we're really going to go there and take it there. And did just want to really clarify for anyone who is not sure that the purpose of this series is not to attack the church. It's not to attack it. It's not to dismantle it. It's not to make anybody feel bad. Honestly, Asha and I are, believe it or not, pretty conflict avoidant. And we don't care enough about bringing it all down to invite the type of scrutiny and attention to ourselves, like for that to be the motivation behind this video. The purpose of this whole series is to really, like I said, validate, educate, and empower people who had similar or the same experiences as us. We were very fortunate, as we shared in our first video, that when we were thinking about leaving and actually made the decision to leave this organization, that we had a little book club turned into best friend family group. But so many people don't have that opportunity or experience. They're leaving by themselves with all this doubt and self-criticism and insecurity and fear in their minds. And so we just realized how fortunate we were and wanted to kind of be that voice of validation and assurance for other people. So that is the motive behind this series. That's it. Next, as in the first video, there are disclaimers for this one, quite similar. Number one, we are not interested in debates. We're not interested in having talks with leadership. We're not interested in having talks with anyone, basically, who's coming and trying to dispute or question or whatever. And the reason is not because we are so unreasonable or unwilling to look at things from another angle, but I was in the church for like 13 or 14 years. I think Asha was in for 21 years. And throughout that time, we had many talks with many people, sharing how we felt hurt, sharing what we thought maybe wasn't in line with God's spirit and his word, sharing things we have seen, just so many things, sharing suggestions for changes or adjustments. And at pretty much every turn, there was gaslighting, there was denial, there was being strung along, there was having things turned back around on us and being guilted or shamed or blamed for being critical and divisive, you name it. And so, what else is there to be said? We're no longer interested in that. So yeah, please don't ask. You already know the answer. The answer is no. No, we don't want to talk. Then also, if you would like to reach out and DM us or text us, trying to convince us otherwise or shame or blame or gaslight further, do know that it is quite likely that screenshots will be taken and your rhetoric will be used for future content, educational purposes. If you would like to volunteer for that, we greatly thank you, but do know to anticipate that. Let's see, what next? Okay, lastly, while you go through this series, I'm not sure if this is the first video that you're coming upon, but if you experienced time in the ICOC or you were a loved one of someone who was in the ICOC and was on the receiving end of possibly some hurtful interactions, watching these conversations, it's very likely that some painful, suppressed memories may start to surface. It could be hard. And so if that's the case, feel free to pause the video and come back at another time, even if that's weeks from now. And feel free also to check out this video that myself and Erin, a licensed mental health professional, had last week, earlier this week, just talking about how to deal with trauma that resurfaces and these painful emotions and things like that. And so I think there's a feature on YouTube where you can have a link for a video come down. If I can't figure that out, look for the link to the video in the description. So yeah, that's basically it. I do have my bestie Asha here again to help with this topic. And so, like I said, we're going to start off talking about purity culture. And so I've done enough talking. I'm going to hand it over to her and we're going to get started.
All right. Hello, everybody. So we're going to talk about purity culture today, but more specifically like toxic purity culture, right? Because this is something that so many people are learning throughout their lives as they're adult, getting older, in marriage. It has an effect on them. And people are trying to figure out what to do with the toxic ideals that they carry with them from this toxic purity culture. But pretty much this purity culture is kind of like a evangelical movement from the 90s, really, where there were false promises, misinformation, and lots of shame and guilt used to persuade people to abstain from sex, right? Ultimately, purity culture is like something that creates this idealistic view of flourishing as a pure Christian. It says that if you achieve these things we've set in place, you'll flourish. But what a lot of people are finding is that what ends up happening is the exact opposite. That a lot of these ideals and the pressure and the shame and guilt that's pushed on you actually ultimately diminishes you, right? You become less of what you would have been instead of more. Instead of this concept adding to you, it takes away from you. It pretty much says that all of these rules and standards, all of the shame, everything strategically put into place is to help you reach your fullest potential. But instead, these processes and tactics keep you walking around feeling like an object that's just trying to avoid making someone stumble, right? This object walking around trying to avoid losing value, because I feel like it's also a value system. It's a guilt and shame model that tells you you cannot make someone stumble, but it's also a value system. There's this idea of becoming damaged goods if you break your purity, if you do something impure. So people kind of become very hypervigilant and very frantic about how you just move about all of your relationships, especially guy-girl relationships. And you're just trying to appear a certain way to people as well. Because in this system, there's also people watching, right? We're always watching. And I feel like ICOC is that evangelical purity culture on steroids. I know in our environment, I felt like there was a lot of mistrust, right? A big scripture that is used is Ephesians 5:3, that talks about there must not be even a hint, right? And that was said all the time. So now that means you have to be mindful, even if you're not doing something, you have to now be mindful of how it might look to someone. So you're constantly walking around just trying not to give off a hint. You're constantly walking around questioning your relationships. And you're very, very insecure. And you show up as just this diminished person. So we're going to talk about some of the examples and how that has shown up in our lives. I think a lot of what purity culture is based around, and I had to look at this again, so much as you're deconstructing and healing, you come back and you look at scriptures, right? You look at scriptures that you've read a certain way for so long, and you look at them for what they actually say. But one of the scriptures that really, I feel like a lot of this is based off of is, 1 Corinthians 6, starting in verse 16. And it's about how, in the Corinthian church, they had these sacred temples where people slept with prostitutes. So there's some context here as Paul is addressing this church. And he says, do you not know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in body? For it is said the two will become one flesh. But he who unites himself with the Lord is one with him in spirit, right? This whole thing is about you are to be united with God. You are to honor God with your body. So instead of doing this, do this, right? You no longer go to these sacred temples to commit immorality. No, we're now sacred, set aside for God. We're united with him. We don't do that anymore. What this passage does not say is that you lose value. What this passage does not say is you're damaged goods. What this passage does not say is that you lose bits and pieces of yourself, and your future spouse and your relationship will suffer going forward. It doesn't say all of that. And those are a lot of the things added on to purity culture that keep people just stressed and worried about their value and how they are harming others in ways that I just feel the scriptures do not communicate. So yeah. So another thing that I think about purity culture is, like I said, it's a value system. It's a system of shame and guilt. And it's kind of a type of sexual elitism, right? Those who were able to keep themselves pure, keep themselves a virgin, are held up as these shining examples. And that's a lot of where this idea that you are damaged goods comes from. Like, this person will have more success. This person is promised a better marriage, which is just not true, right? So many people later on who held on to these ideals later on find out I was not automatically promised this magical union. As a matter of fact, because I was so afraid of being impure for so long, it's actually impacting even my freedom in my marriage. You definitely learn that as a woman, your body is a threat. A man's lust or even disrespect, if he approaches you in a way that's inappropriate, a lot of that is taught to women that is your fault, right? You're kind of the gatekeepers. You're supposed to protect the men. We cause men to struggle. So in a lot of purity culture, it is well known that it is heavily laid on the women more than the men. We are taught that men are just sexual creatures who cannot help themselves. It's not true. So therefore, we're responsible for everything, right? So those are some of the things we're going to talk about today that just really harm people going forward.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because it's such a accepted train of thought that the guys will even kind of have these discussions among themselves about how the women need to get it together. And so someone shared with me, it was a man shared with me that one time, I think it was at a college small group meeting, we call them Bible talks, that there was this is all so bad, a visitor. So basically, if you did not belong to the church and you came out, you were a visitor. And so there was a visitor there, and I don't know if she had like a sweater kind of off the shoulder, or if she had a tank top on, and the guys wanted her to have a cardigan, or not guys, there was this one guy in particular. There's this one guy, member of the church, goes over to a couple of other guys, and who were typically more progressive for this group, and is saying like, hey, do you think we should get the sisters to talk to her about covering up her shoulder? Like that, whoa. And I don't know if he said he was having a hard time with it or what, but it must have stood out to him if he's approaching the guys like, whoa, there is a shoulder. There is a shoulder in our midst. And fortunately, the guys that he was talking to, the two guys, were like, how about let's talk about you? Like, why? Like, first of all, she doesn't even go here. So she has not agreed to this standard. Second of all, sir, it is a shoulder. Like, and that's it, this is like 20 teens, America, college campus. So I know that other cultures have other standards, and that is culture, and I respect that and I appreciate that. But for American college, everyday, like maybe 2010, 2011 college campus, sir, it is a shoulder. It might as well be an elbow. But that is, the level of responsibility that is put on the women, that like, now if you even want to hear the word of God from us, you need to know how you need to come looking in this event. And so I'm just so grateful that those other guys were there to be able to kind of check him. But I will point out, because some people might hear that story and think like, oh, but the other two guys were there and they put him in his place. Like, that is not the norm.
No.
The first guy who's pointing out the shoulder, actually, in this experience, that he is the norm. So, yeah. And then even with that, it's hard. And I think Asha touched on it in the first video with the leader worship and how they kind of dangle this prize over you, that especially when it comes to modesty and dressing appropriately, that the standard is whatever the leaders decide the standard is. Right. And so it's different as you travel to each church. And we've shared before that we kind of spiritually grew up in the Hampton Roads Church, and it is definitely kind of the mecca of conservative belief. So we were pretty intense, but where you go, there's different standards, but there typically is a standard. And when you cross it, you will be addressed in one way or another, probably pulled to the side or talked to and about afterwards. But yeah, it just makes it hard. And so I remember when I was kind of brought into the church and went through the Bible study series and being trained as a new member and things like that, that like, even going to the beach, we are in the world, but we are not of the world. And we want to be a shining example. We are aliens in a foreign land, and we do not belong here. Heaven is our home. And so we should be so different. And so even what I'm seeing is, as I go to pool parties or to the beach with these people, like these young women are wearing full like surfer gear, like bodysuits, full bodysuits, or swim shorts and a t-shirt, and all just completely covered, and guys getting in the pool with like full clothes on. And I'm like, okay, like I this is different. I get not even a hint. Nobody's struggling here. And so but then I think 2-3 years later, all of a sudden, I guess the elders or the elders' wives got together and realized, this is strange. Actually, Asha told me, because we were talking about it, I think last year or something, that there was one particular leader's daughter or daughters who didn't like that rule anymore. And I guess she made a big fuss and made a petition, even though that's not what was publicized. I never heard that side. Asha had some intel because they were more in the similar generation. But yes, so she made a big fuss about it. And so now all of a sudden it's okay. And we want to be all things to all people. And if you're at the beach, the context of the beach and wearing a bathing suit is it's okay. But of course it depends on your body type. So that's a whole other thing. But now it's okay because you don't want to be weird to people at the beach or at the pool. But now I've been around, I've been reading the Bible, I've been hearing lessons, I've been trying to develop my own convictions for 2 or 3 years. And you have convinced me that my body is like a vehicle for causing others to sin. And there's a scripture that you have ingrained in me, which is, it's Mark 9:42. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and they were thrown into the sea. Yeah. So like this huge cement block tied to you and you're thrown in the water. It would be better for that to happen to you than for you to cause someone who believes in God to stumble. Now that I have matured and I'm out of it, I'm pretty sure that scripture is not talking about short shorts and cleavage. But you have convinced me, a teenager and a young teen, that if I come out in a 2-piece or show my belly button or, God forbid, my shoulder, that like all my brothers are going to lust after me, and the men in the world like will be so blinded by my womanly physique that like they could never hear the word of God. Like, what in the world? Which is so funny because even as I started moving from that, I was like, I mean, I don't think I'm bad looking, but I just really feel like when I go to the beach in a bathing suit, everyone is not stopping and staring at me. Like, I just don't think I possess that. Like, and not at all in a self-doubt or self-deprecating kind of way, but just kind of like, who is going to the beach and commanding all that attention? Nobody. So, So anyway, to get back to the point, now I'm being told it's okay to wear a bathing suit. And so this one particular leader, she was the campus ministry leader at the time, who I was also informed was the one who was making the fuss, was like, don't be weird, don't be legalistic. And I'm like, man, you're the one who taught me the law. Like, what are you talking about? And so I was shamed into covering up my body. Now I'm being shamed for not wanting to display my body. And it's all centered around people. Like, even though I'm saying like, no, well, I understand what you're saying, but now I don't feel comfortable doing that. I would like to cover up so I don't have that blood on my hands. But now I'm being pressured into changing.
And that's a part that drives you a little bit crazy. I just know there has to be a word for this. I know I always say this, but this being shamed for doing something 1 second, and then someone comes along and people want to change it for them. All of a sudden, for whatever reason, it's now ridiculous. There's never this coming back and saying, oh my gosh, we've learned something new. We should have never done that. We're evaluating the way we do things. It's just automatically, they're coming to you as if you made that up. Hey, stop being legalistic. What are you wearing? What are you doing? And they're now shaming you again for following the rule they created. Same thing happened to me. You know, I, again, came up in this church kind of early where purity was huge. And it's like only now that I'm realizing these events are traumas. They're little traumas that you hold with you because you just aren't even aware, you know, of what's about to happen to you for these mistakes. For me, I think it was the very first one of the things they have in Hampton Roads Church specifically is masquerade balls, okay? And it was the first one. I don't have a ball gown, you know, so everyone is so excited about it. I am too, but I don't have money. I'm a poor college student. And then a sister lets me borrow her dress. It's a normal dress to me. It comes up pretty high. There's no cleavage, it's nothing crazy, but what it does have are spaghetti straps. It has spaghetti straps.
Spaghetti straps.
I don't think that that's bad. No one's ever told me it's bad. It's actually been given to me by another sister who also wore a dress with spaghetti straps. Hey, she's been here longer than me. We're going
It's
to
practically a bra. It's practically a bra.
I might as well have been naked. So I go to my first masquerade ball with actually my now husband. And
that's what did it. You sealed the deal. He's like, that spaghetti strap looking right.
Oh my goodness. And after that masquerade ball, what I didn't know was that the whole time there was this discussion about how disgusting and awful it was that certain people were wearing spaghetti straps. And it was only me and that one sister who gave me a dress to borrow. So there were lessons after to discuss it. There was lots of correction and you know, talks about how this is not pure, how it makes people struggle. Why would you wear that here? And it's very, and then I think the big thing are the lessons that would occur afterwards. Now let's teach everyone never to do this, but it's very clear who was wearing it, right? It was only me and somebody else. So those are things it's just, you just sit in this shame. You just sit in it like, I didn't know. And now it's this big deal. And I remember, you know, of course, I had fun. I had no clue that this was cardinal sin. People are taking pictures. And my husband later on brought the picture from, you know, the masquerade ball. Like, here's the picture of us at the masquerade ball. Not only, of course, is it the dress of me and the spaghetti straps, but someone took the picture only from here up. So you don't even see the dress. You just see the spaghetti straps. All you see is shoulders. And I am mortified. I'm like, can I keep that picture? And I think I destroyed it because I'm so traumatized from this. And then later on, people are laughing at the ridiculousness that people would be so crazy and so legalistic over spaghetti straps. And you're sitting there wondering to yourself, am I crazy? Did I just make all this up? Like, I was shamed. No one's going to acknowledge that. And you start to wonder if the past, what that event actually even happened. You know, that is such a normal occurrence, what you explained. You know, you get shamed for doing it. And then somewhere along the way, the rule changes. And then people are kind of laughing at you for being such a prude, I guess. That definitely was a big thing with the beach. I came to the beach with my, you know, biker shorts plus tennis skirt plus tank top that comes all the way up here. I mean, I still have these. I cannot wear, I still to this day cannot wear a shirt that is shaped like a V like this without wearing these really, really high tank tops. I will never do it. I don't know if I'll ever recover. And everyone, I get there and everyone's wearing bathing suits. I don't know that this is okay. And I am getting kind of like, girl, what are you doing? You don't have to do all of that. Since when? Since when? When did this stop? So yeah, that happened a lot to me where things would just flip and I just had no idea. So now I'm on this other end where people are like, Asha is just so extreme. Well, you didn't endure a lot of the shaming I went through. So excuse me if I just keep myself protected from that ever happening again. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah. I just was like,
yeah,
a lot.
And the shaming, like we're laughing again, like we said previously, we're laughing because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it is really hurtful. And it's really damaging. And so yeah, it was last year, maybe early last year. I was, we leave video messages for each other in our little group thread. And I had brought up, I guess, something resurfaced. I'm not sure how, but just the thought of how much shame I experienced around my wedding dress. Mm-hmm. And I cried. Like I cried, maybe, was it an hour, Asha, that we were all going back and forth? And I was just like sobbing. Because I had never really allowed myself to feel how hurt it was, right? Because you're just getting whipped into shape. No discipline feels good at the time, but God disciplines those he loves. And you fall in line, and you don't become self-piteous or make it about you. You have to be focused on being righteous and all of that. And so I never really acknowledged the feelings that I felt. I just felt deep, immense shame, and I didn't even talk about it a lot. And so the event, because I'm dancing around it, is so I had a strapless wedding dress. Oh, God forbid. Yeah. I had no money, very, very little money. And so this was my mother-in-law's wedding dress. And so I tried it on. It fit. It was nice. I was like, I can work with this. It's free. And it was, it was pretty. So that's what I went with. And there was enough kind of scandal over that. I had a couple more progressive people in my corner who were like, it's fine, it's fine. Those people are just kind of hanging on. So I'm like, okay, cool. So that's step one. Had to clear that, get it together. Then day of the wedding, as everyone knows, it's a bit of a blur. Everyone's just kind of like, put this on, let me do your hair, let me do your makeup. We got to take pictures. We got to do this. We got to do that. And so in the midst, my sister-in-law, who is, not a member of the church and probably not thinking anything of it, like, oh, that's my mom's dress. Here's the corset my mom wore with the dress. I had never tried the corset on with the dress. But I'm just like, oh, okay, sure. And again, everything's a blur. So let's just do the whole thing. Well, the corset had the girls sitting up really high. So high. Whoa, they were really there. But I'm not noticing. I'm in a daze. I'm about to marry my very best friend. Like, all my friends are here. This is great. Well, on one end, it's great. There was other drama, but the point is, it's a hurricane, and I'm not thinking. I'm just getting dressed. Then you add on to the fact that, like, a gown, it's heavy, so it's gonna weigh down over time. I had tried on the dress, but I've never worn the dress for hours. I've never danced in the dress. I've never walked to and fro completely down an aisle in the dress. Like, I don't know how it's gonna react. Anyways, cleavage galore. What are you gonna do? And I'm not really noticing. As the day goes on, I'm like, I'm having to pull up a lot. But I don't really see myself. And so that's that. I leave. I go on my honeymoon. At this point, no one has said anything to me, but the shame culture is so bad that all throughout the honeymoon, I would just bring up to my husband occasionally, like, I feel really embarrassed. I don't feel good about this. I don't think it's going to go well. Or I'm seeing pictures get posted on Facebook from the wedding, and I'm like, oh my God, they're out there. And I've been like covered since I joined. I think it was like 7 or 8 years at that point. Like, nobody's really ever had to talk to me about modesty. So, yeah, type A, oldest sister, people-pleasing daughter of a narcissist. If there's one thing I know how to do, it's learn the rules and follow them.
Yeah.
So I had it on lock. And then I'm thinking, again, the pressure and the blame that gets put on you. I remember telling my husband, like, oh my gosh, so-and-so drove down with his wife from this state, and so-and-so came here. chest to see my breast. This is terrible. Like I invited them into a den of sin or something. But I just felt like how disrespectful, how, how awful. And Horace is like, that's my husband. I don't think so. If you want to see Immodest, I can show you Immodest. Like, let me show you some of the immodest women, whatever. And so, yeah, I'm like, okay, but he's so easy going and doesn't let things affect him. But in my mind, I'm like, no, I know how this goes. I know how this is not going to go well, but I try to put it out of my mind. So honeymoon's over, and let me not lead you to believe something that's not true. I had an amazing honeymoon, but it could have been better if I didn't have that like always kind of creeping in the back of my mind. And when things are still, it's like, what are the people gonna say? What are the people already saying? So get back in town. I think the first week I'm back or the next week, get a text from the main women's ministry leader. Hey, Nikita, can we catch up after midweek? And I'm like, great. Why else would she be texting me? I'm like, don't be paranoid. Don't be paranoid. It could be anything, but it's not anything. So me trying to be assertive at the time, sure, what's up? What do you want to talk about? Like, can I feel this out? And then she does, this gets on my nerves so bad. Oh, just some BS answer. I don't know. She doesn't tell me anything. Mm-hmm. So I think just wanting to catch up or something like that. I'm like, well, that was helpful. Not. Now I would have been much more assertive and just ask, like, what do you want to talk about? But I didn't have those skills or tools then. So anyway, I get into her car after the midweek service on Wednesday. And she's like, how was everything? I was like, well, it was great. But I was kind of anxious. And I'm sure she was so happy to hear that because she's like, what were you anxious about? Oh, wow. So I tell her just to I'm like, let's just put it out there. She's like, I actually wanted to talk to you about that. And it becomes a lecture and like, what were you thinking? And did you get advice? And then she goes on to tell me that she put a picture from the wedding up on her Facebook page, but an elder's wife said, how did she phrase it? That she asked the women's ministry leader to take it down because she didn't want her husband to see it or something like that. Like she was offended by the image of me. Mm-hmm. It was so offensive to her that she wanted it taken down and she didn't think her husband or others should have to see it. So that's hard. And then the ministry leader goes on to say, some pictures are just, they're just good as family photos that people can see when they, come over, you share with a select few. But yeah, and even the one that your husband's using as his profile picture, like it's cute, but it's not, that one's kind of bad too. So he should probably take that one down. And yeah. And then it's the woman to blame, because then I shared that Horace didn't think it was that bad. Well, yeah, husbands don't think it's that bad because they see all of us. And they just don't have a sober view of what people really think. So it's like, okay. And so just feeling so shamed, again, because I'm a rule follower, I'm a people pleaser, I've worked hard all this time to follow the rules. Yeah. And then now on my wedding day, I have done it apparently in the most egregious way. Yeah. And as a daughter of a narcissist, I don't know what it is to be celebrated. No. Narcissists ruin birthdays, graduations, anything that's about you because they don't like the spotlight to be on someone else. Yeah. And so ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to be married. And then you come into a church, an organization like this, where young marriage is extra glorified, probably because of the toxic purity culture, and people are just so desperate to live together and have sex. or even just be alone together. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing all my peers have these gorgeous engagement photos and then gorgeous wedding photos, and they're plastered all over Facebook, and it's so beautiful. And I just want that moment. Like, I felt so beautiful, and it's me and my husband, and the images or whatever. And it's like, I can't even share that with people. And you're telling me that I can have them in my home, but obviously not even on my wall, because there's it is apparently a boudoir session. Like, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
But I had suppressed that. But it came up, and I was talking, to my friends about it, and just sobbing for how embarrassed and shamed I was, and then even just robbed of the opportunity to enjoy becoming a bride.
Yes.
So, not to mention all the other toxic family stuff that was going on. So maybe that's a story time for another day, but I hated my engagement and I hated my wedding.
Yeah.
So there's that. But that's a side vendetta.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. I could go on and on about the process I went through with being engaged and trying to go through a wedding with family stuff and just trying to make sure that I didn't offend anybody. I just think that that's so many parts of my life where I look back and I think about how so many events, I don't know if they ever were, right? I'm hoping that I can look forward to something in the future. So many events were marred with this, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? I cannot relax. I have all of these parameters, all of these.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, go for it.
Because the world says that the wedding is your day, but in the churches, no, it's God's day, and it's your family's day, and it's everybody's day, but your day. Your wedding is a tool for evangelism, and it's a tool to thank people and celebrate the other people who have worked so hard. Yeah, so I was made aware of that very quickly, that this was not my day.
Oh yeah, it's not. And so it was just constant anxiety of trying to make sure that everyone felt happy. And you can't do it right? You can't. You can't make everyone happy. So you're bound to feel some shame. You're bound to feel some failure. And I look back at that stuff and it's like, this is so wrong. Why should I have felt like a failure on my wedding day? And like, this was all around. My family wasn't happy with me, I am frantic. I'm trying to make sure that I have the thickest straps you can possibly put on a dress. The thickest strap. Like when I tell you that the masquerade ball destroyed me, it did. I don't like a lot of my wedding photos because I don't like the way my dress looks. Of course, when I was out looking for wedding gowns, you couldn't find a dress that wasn't strapless, right? So I found one and went out and bought some thick material and had someone put it on, and it looks kind of ridiculous as I look back at my pictures, but no one told me to take my pictures off of Facebook, right? I can keep them up.
You won!
But so much of my wedding is like a blur. It was definitely fun. I definitely have the best husband in the world, but so much of it is a blur from trying to keep everybody happy. Worrying about purity, because worrying about so much stuff. And that's this toxicity, this elitism, this shame and guilt that you just carry. It's supposed to be something that magnifies you, edifies you, just illuminates how great you are. But all it becomes is a bunch of rules, and you're frantically trying to figure out if you're doing it right. And you always have people watching. always have people watching. I was thinking about even in our dating relationship, right? I was hyper vigilant about no one thinking that I was too into Odell. Right? That I liked him too much, that we were spending too much time together. I was constantly being like, everyone thinks we're good, right? Like, you see how I don't sit with him all the time when we're at certain things. You see how we're still both serving a lot in different arenas. Be okay with us. I remember one time I was sick. And so I was sick on a Wednesday night, right? So it's midweek service. And I tell Odell that I'm sick and just that I won't be coming to church, so he would know where I was at. And then at 7:01 p.m., so midweek starts at 7, I hear a knock on the door. And it is Odell standing there with soup and ginger ale and different things to, help because I'm sick, of course. And do you think that I enjoyed that moment, Nikita? I did not, because it was 7. It was 7. You were supposed to be at church, but instead you are here. You are here. That means that you put me before God. You went to the store and you bought soup and you bought juice and you put me before God. You have destroyed us. We will have to break up now. How are we an example of shining purity and putting God first? If you're about to be late to midweek, super late, because you should be there right now, and you brought me stuff because I'm sick. Like, that's how frantic you get about this purity culture. Not even a hint, trying to prove that my relationship is above board. It's just exhausting. It's exhausting, but yeah.
Yeah, it is exhausting because the leaders, they have the standard, which is kind of uniform, but definitely changes based on, the couple and how the leaders view the couple. And they have the power to take it away, to shut it all down. Speaking of which, in a couple of days, I will be sharing a conversation that I had with a friend, and he and I actually became estranged. We were never interested in each other like that, but you'll have to watch the video. But because the leaders got involved in the way that they did, he and I haven't talked in like 10 years plus. So yeah, make sure you tune in for that. But I was told by leadership later that they thought I was way too into Horace.
You cannot do that. You can't do that, Nikita. That's what I saw people get in trouble for that. Yes.
I liked him too much.
Yes.
And that when I asked, so when we got engaged and I was putting our little wedding website together, I was going around and asking people like, oh, when did you know, or when did you think, that we could be it for each other? And the head women's ministry leader said, I knew you guys, would be good for marriage when Horace could start seeing your sin. Like, okay, thank you for that. Not exactly the romantic answer I was looking for, but apparently they thought, I guess he liked me too much as well. And since he couldn't like readily spout off my sin or wouldn't trash talk me or whatever, that how could he possibly lead me? How could he possibly be a good partner for me if he couldn't see how in sin I was and the huge character flaws? And what I'm not saying is that, okay, I want to make this clear. I'm not saying that I think people shouldn't be able to see each other's weaknesses, right? Like, you want a well-rounded, honest, sober view of each other because nobody's perfect.
Right.
But like, when you're in that young, in love, new, I think I want to marry this person stage, like, I don't think you should be bashing someone for talking more about how great you think they are than just going around and saying like, I just really want to wash Nikita with the word to help her stop being so daggone selfish. I think Yes, I want to marry her so I can save her soul and help her repent of all of her whatever. Like, like, yes, she really is, and I really hope I can help her with that. Like, that's how you wanted to go around talking about me? Like, is that what
Yes.
you want? Like, well, yes, it is. So um, that was really a downer, but
Yeah.
yeah, they can take it away. Like even before it gets to the engagement
Oh, yeah.
point, like when two people are kind of liking each other or trying to figure out if they like each other, sometimes they don't even get the opportunity to figure it out because different people in leadership will be like, that's not a good fit. Or, whatever that means, but they'll just give advice based on their opinion,
Yes.
and make it seem like that's not a wise choice or this person's not good for you. Or one thing that I've seen a lot is, especially in Hampton Roads, one person is kind of on the track to be trained to lead a ministry and the other person doesn't really want to, or maybe they want to, but ministry doesn't think they're as sharp or as polished or whatever. And so it's like, well, this person wants to go into ministry and this person's not really going to do so great.
Mm-hmm.
That's a no-go. Find somebody else, but they'll spiritualize it.
Yes. Happens all the time. So much. You have this whole purity culture. And this is a thing. This could be my opinion. I think it's true. There's this whole purity culture. That's one thing. But at the heart of it, I think so much of it just all goes back to control. Because you can be wholeheartedly buying into this idea that God wants no hint, that being impure diminishes my value. It will affect my relationships and go hard in the paint. But at the end of the day, if the leadership did not approve of your relationship, it was a no-go. And somehow it was spiritualized. So much of purity culture, so much of all the things that we see that are unhealthy in churches, where there's shame and guilt surrounding certain topics, stems from control, placing you in these boxes, giving you these beliefs, making you feel like you can't trust yourself, making you feel like you're an object of sin, right? I'm a threat. I'm a threat to myself. I'm a threat to others. So who do you go to? If you can't trust yourself, if you're a threat, if you can cause someone to stumble so badly that it's beyond repair, what do? I must need other people in my life to hold me together. So you hand over so much of your decision making to leadership, right? Because they're the ones creating these really, really high standards. So they must know what it looks like to be successful. Mm-hmm. And it is well known that if your relationship is not supported by leadership, you are not to continue with that. You will not get the support you need. You will feel, I know several people who felt like they were not supported in their dating relationship, to the point where they didn't want to celebrate, certain other big events in their life with the church, because it's like, you all didn't like me here. I didn't even know what I did wrong. I don't want you also messing up this event. Mm-hmm. I remember, and this is a moment of cognitive dissonance for me, but I remember one of my sisters in her dating relationship. She liked a brother. He was thought of, so your example reminded me of this, thought of someone who they wanted to go into ministry. He wanted to be in ministry. He was so excited about God. Everyone thought he was amazing. He is amazing. But he liked my sister, who did not want to go into ministry. And him being a newer member of this church, he was just going hard in the paint, loving God, thought that my sister was this amazing, godly woman, but I don't think he really understood the rules, right? There are rules, and those rules are centered around making sure you get approval from the hierarchy. You think back to the previous video. And I remember a women's ministry leader calling me after they started dating. And I did not know, because I wasn't in the same region that they were in, calling me and saying, so I think it's weird that they started dating and they are a part of our region and nobody talked to us. And my heart started pounding, pounding, like, oh no. Like, first of all, I felt immediate guilt and shame that I've been a leader, I've been a part of this place for so long, and I didn't double check that they didn't double check with the leaders of that region. Who were you talking to? But at the same time, my sister's so happy. So I don't want to mess this up for her. I know what it's like. Okay, I've seen it happen to people who don't have that support from leadership. And I am frantic at this moment. What is going to happen? Are they going to be forced to break up? Are they as a couple going to be getting the cold shoulder throughout their relationship like I've seen so many people have? And I just am like, but they're amazing. They were getting lots of advice. He was coming to us. I know he was talking to this other couple. I think that they were, like deacons in the church. And I just became frantically over explaining to her that they did get advice. This wasn't impulsive. We did vet him, and hoping that me and my husband were enough. Hoping we were enough for her to be able to have this relationship and be happy in it. And, it was enough, apparently. As far as I can tell, they did eventually get married. But I felt so much shame after that. Not necessarily the shame I felt in the beginning, right? Of, oh my gosh, I didn't check to make sure they follow the rules. But shame in that, why is it this way? Why is it that my heart pounds like this, that I get this frantic, that I am filled with all of this panic because these two adults didn't talk to this adult couple, and it is a real thing, so it's so much about like, make sure we are alerted, make sure we know, make sure that we have approved of this. And the people who are punished, you're too into that person. You're too into, I did such a good job. People would tell me, because I saw it, right? As a child of a narcissist, you have the periphery that goes all the way around to the back of your head, right? And I could see what the rules were and the people who got the approval and who didn't. I spent my whole life trying to get approval, spent my whole life doing it, right? So I'm a master at it. So much of my walk in this fellowship appeared to be good. It was good, but I avoided a lot of stuff. So people can be like, why are you so traumatized? Now, I went through some traumatizing stuff, but a lot of it comes from me observing the consequences of others who didn't know the rules. You know how I joked with you last video when you were like, I told that team to go out and get a job. I was like, girl, no. Go get her own apartment. I know you didn't. It was clear that she didn't want it. That don't matter. Right? So much of it comes from me watching and seeing the rules and seeing how this works. And I would take it all on, add it to my bag of anxiety, add it to my bag, because that's what I did my whole life. I know how to do that, right? So yeah, it's just like what you said, it's so much of, at the end of the day, if I can figure out where the goalpost is, that's the only place where I'm safe. And a big part of purity culture, right, is used as a method of control. And if you are too into somebody, how it's spiritualized, I guess that's where I was going, how all of that was spiritualized is because we're so immersed in purity culture and you're so afraid, right, that you're tainting someone or you're being tainted or you're putting off a hint. So you're already afraid so much of that. You're already filled with fear from the purity culture. So when someone says y'all are a little too into each other, it's like telling someone that they have been caught in sexual immorality. It's like saying you've been caught naked. And you know what it means. It is a weaponized statement. And it all depends. It really all depends. As someone who sits back and observes, I can tell you it all depends on who it is. So
yeah. And it's hard because I'm like, how do I explain? Then you have the other aspect, right? Where like, because dating is such a big deal and you have to jump through so many hoops. And then I don't know if we mentioned this before, but you better not even think about dating someone outside of this organization.
Oh, no.
Because even though we're not the only church, is what they will say with their mouth. You can't, if you find someone from some other organization, how could you? They're not a Christian, like. So, or they have to completely restudy the Bible under our system so we can make sure they're. So anyway, there's all these hoops. So it's likely, especially when you're younger, and I was 22, 23, I think I was 22 when I first started dating my husband. And so most of your friends at that time are probably not dating and on the path to getting engaged. And even though we were not old at that time, in evangelical and Southern ICOC culture, we weren't married straight out of college. We're practically old maids.
Yes.
So, especially this is like Facebook is at like peak height at this time, and all the engagement photos and wedding photos and honeymoon photos just everywhere. So like, oh my gosh, our little marriage clocks are ticking. Yeah. So then I am dating and it seems to be, going well at that point in time. But my closest friends, most of them, all of them are not, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have these meetings, they're called D groups. It's short for like discipling group or discipleship group, where people share they're confessing sin or they're getting advice on how to help someone else spiritually or whatever. That's typically it, confessing and getting advice. And so I'm hearing them week after week talk about how discontent they are with being single. Plus, even outside of D group, we're friends. We've been friends since we were in college. I know these women. We share the same similar feelings. Like I've shared with them similar things. And so I'm so super happy in my relationship. What do I look like every time I talk to them? Yeah. And Horace did this, and Horace said that, and me and Horace are gonna this, and I'm gonna start a Pinterest board. Like, that's obnoxious and inconsiderate. So, and again, a people pleaser. So I'm not sharing.
No.
But I will write about it in my journal. And then my future mother-in-law, my discipler, and I think one of my friends from that group approached me at different times. It just doesn't seem like you're really into Horace.
Girl.
Like, it seems like maybe he likes you more than you like him. Are you invested? Are you this? Are you that? And I'm like, am I too into him or am I not into him enough? Like,
yes.
What in the world? And I have to put on for you. Are you guys on our dates? Like, me and him are fine. What are you? But of course, I don't say all this. I'm just confused. I feel guilty. But then I'm just like, do y'all want to read my journals? They're full. They're full of how I just can't wait to get married. Like, but I'm just not going to be gushing about him. And then also remember, and of course, at this time, I don't know. I don't know my mom's a narcissist. I'm not aware that I have trauma. I'm not aware of all these things. I'm not aware that I'm in a cult. So everything is my fault.
Yes.
But I just am like, I don't want to make other people feel bad. Yeah. But now I feel bad because apparently I'm acting like I don't like him. Not to mention already, Horace and I Horace I don't think was ever really approached, but I was approached about some things in my character I needed to work on. I don't even remember what they were. It was always something. Later found out that it was a direct result of my depression that I had asked about. Do you think I have depression? And I was told it was unrepentant sin. So that's another story for another day. But yeah, because I was always tired, I was selfish and self-focused, and guess because I was anxious, again, self-focused, and not thinking about others, not putting others ahead of myself, and just different things like that. And then Horace is very like go, 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 go. He can do a lot. He's high energy. He's an extrovert. He can accomplish a lot and go at the speed. Like he's this ministry's dream, because he can go to no end.
Yes.
And to be paired up with me.
No.
So I think they were trying to find a way to get in there. And so that was hard. I remember feeling, even like 2 or 3 days before our wedding, one of my mentors, disciplers, asked me like if I was excited and how I felt. And I said, I do feel a little insecure. And I feel like we're going to get to the front of the church and everybody in the crowd is going to be looking at us and feeling like Horace settled to be with me. Like nobody really approves of this marriage, but they're letting it happen. And so, yeah, like I'm just lucky to be here. I'm just happy to be here. And that is how I felt going into it.
Because there's a prototype. There is a prototype. So that is a whole nother conversation, but I'll just throw it out here. There are certain personality types that are spiritualized, right? So if you don't have this personality type, let's say that it's because you are in sin. Your introversion, your low energy, your depression, your inability to carry on a conversation with anyone is actually your selfishness. It's actually sin. It actually has everything to do with you not being outward focused enough. Let's spiritualize this. And that was a big thing in dating too, right? You hit on a huge point that Horace was the prototype and you're not. You probably were able to be for a while because you're a high performer. I think you mentioned that. But coming from trauma, your body is starting to process things you've been through. You're in another high performance, guilt, shame environment, and your body can't do it anymore, right? And so it's like the church feels bamboozled by you now not fitting that prototype. And it's like, we're going to withhold some of the support. We're going to start suggesting that maybe this isn't necessarily a good union, and I know you brought up things like that before, that people had said certain things like that. And a lot of that has to do with a certain prototype of a person. That's one of the things that I always tried to fit. I was always trying to appear extroverted, happy, giggly all the time, pushing myself beyond my boundaries all the time because I understood that was the prototype. When I started having all those panic attacks and pulling away, it's to the point that I've almost become agoraphobic. My therapist told me, you are this close to being agoraphobic. I do not want to leave the house unless I have to. The only reason I leave the house is because I have a job or my husband is like, let's go out. And even then, like even today, we have people, because I'm trying to sell this house. You want this house? Waterfront property? Come get it. I'm going to say that in every video. So we get in the car so that people can come see the house. And he's like, oh, do you want to go to breakfast? Do you want to do something? And I was like, no, I didn't even want to leave the house. I don't want to leave my car. I'm having a complete reaction to how much I didn't listen to my body and tried to fit this prototype. So that's a huge one. I think you said something that reminded me too, because you're like, I'm trying not to look too into Horace. I'm trying not to talk about him all the time. But now people are saying, do you even like him? You know, it's like always this doubt being pushed. I think for me and Odell, people would say, it isn't, you know, I like you and Odell. It's like you guys are dating, but nothing's really changed. We were applauded for that on this side. It's like nothing's really changed. And I just was like, whew, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. You know, there were a few people who were close to us that were like, do you guys fight? Do you guys, you know, like spend time together alone? I was like, never, never. And so we were, you know, getting encouraged to like grow a little bit more deeper, but deeper, no, that means that I'm too into him. I was frightened to death of that, you know? That's why we dated for 3 years before we got engaged. We were taking things very slow. I want to do this right. I don't want anyone to say anything about my relationship that it was not pure, that we did not. I want to stand up in front of everybody on my wedding day and everyone say, this is their first kiss. And they were so pure. That was like a goal of mine because of how pervasive this purity culture was, how much I wanted to be accepted. So yeah, it's real. It's real.
Yeah, and the acceptance is like huge.
Yeah.
I found out, was I engaged or was I already married? And part of me wishes, I'm like, I wish nobody told me this, but they did. So I'll share.
Yeah.
That I found out that someone who I considered to be maybe not a friend, but a good acquaintance. Like we had been in the same circles and had some good talks because, of course, in this organization, you overshare with everybody. But I found out that I think either leading up to me and my husband dating or leading up to me and my husband getting engaged, that this person went to lunch with my future mother-in-law and basically was asking and insinuating, like, do you really think Nikita's a good fit for him? Like, you know how Horace is, and well, this is how Nikita is, and you know, basically that I can be slower and, you know, I guess sadder, especially at that time. Like I'm unmedicated and I'm being treated like a workhorse. And shamed all the time. So, and having to work and not have a lot of money and not really working in my field. And the list goes on and on and on about why I might be sad in that time. And just different things about how we weren't, you know, good on paper. And so that really hurt to find out later that this person, these types of people were smiling in my face, but then going behind and like kind of trying to take this from under me. And I know I said earlier that I hated my engagement and my wedding, but those were external things. That was never about the connection between me and Horace. Like Horace has always been my happy place, even with all of this stuff going on. Like he never even really brought any of it to me. I don't think he internalized any of it. He was like, nope, that's my pick. I like this about her. I appreciate this about her. Like he didn't even think anything about it. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that. But it just hurt to find out that that's what was going on.
That's that prototype stuff. That's what it is. So yeah. It's something else I was thinking when it comes to that whole prototype thing and how that can change and shift depending on who is held in high esteem. There's this whole concept or this idea that whoever has the strictest, highest standard, whoever sacrifices the most, that is the new goal for everyone, right? Whatever is the most conservative, most sacrificial, meaning you just do nothing for yourself. You run on no sleep. Those types of things are glorified, right? So yeah, that is the goal, that's the aim, and that's what you weren't hitting at that time in people's minds. Were you actually unsuccessful? Were you actually lazy? Were you actually self-focused? No, you're actually a human. So much of the way just being a person in this church operates is humanity is stripped. All of those things, all of those limitations are now sin. They're just all now sin. If you are sick, you better have a good reason. You better, you might want to actually just even hide it, you know? I don't know how many leaders meetings or different meetings I was in, and someone who had like a of extreme or severe chronic illness was always built up for still going so hard in the paint. They were still doing A, B, C, and D. They were still sharing their faith, even when they were in a hospital. So it sends this message like, please, we don't want to hear that you're tired. You know, and if we do, let's talk about what's really going on. You know, it's your selfishness. So yeah.
Yeah. And so it's crazy. You take all of that, and then if you make it to marriage, if you make it to marriage, all it is a working partnership for the church.
Yes.
Like that's it. Now you can study the Bible with couples.
Yeah.
And if your house is big enough, or you can make it work, then you can house people and have them over and feed people and things like that. Because now that you're married, that's what you're supposed to do. You give back in that way. And even though you are married, you don't have that much time to spend with each other. And if you do try to prioritize time to spend with each other, you could be accused of idolizing each other.
Yes.
Because you don't want to put your spouse ahead of God.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like a ongoing concept, especially amongst maybe campus people. I think I heard mostly campus people saying this. When I get married, I don't want to get weak like I see some of the married couples, or I don't want to get unfocused like them, or I don't want to lose my zeal. It's another phrase I'm looking for, but you know what I'm saying? It was just kind of like when people get married, they're not as fired up anymore. I won't be like that, right? So that was a fear. That was something that was always in the back of my mind. When really just marriage is a different stage of life. There are different priorities. People are raising children. They're working just as hard, but it's on different things. But that just goes back to how there are only a short list of things that this church values, right? It's only a short list of things that are valued, despite what you're actually doing out here to help humanity, to serve God in different ways. These are the things we value. And that is displayed. And when you're in church and there's good news sharing is only a short list of things. You know, it's did you meet somebody? Are you studying the Bible with somebody? Did somebody just get baptized? Maybe somebody will throw in there that it's my anniversary, birthday, or I just got a new job. But we all know what good news sharing really is. It would never be that, you know, I helped my kid with their homework today. It would never be that, I don't know, just the other things you do all day, every day to serve. It's a very short list of things. And so you have to somehow maintain your marriage while still proving to people that you're not idolizing each other by being at all these events, making sure you're still showing your face and you're still serving in a certain way, which was a really big issue for me and Odell in the beginning of our marriage. Because like we said, we wanted to be those people. You know, we will not get weak when we get married. And my husband took that very, very, very literally. And like I said, in our dating relationship, we were very strict, you know, very conservative, trying to be the gold standard. And I was so happy when we got married. I thought, okay, now I get to experience this closeness. Now all these barriers are down. But they did not automatically, the walls did not just automatically come down. As a matter of fact, and we'll talk about this later in the video, so much of those walls are coming down now as we're deconstructing a lot of ideas. And we've been married for 16 years. But it was like, we have to prove that we are still servants. And it's like, it was several years that we didn't even ride to church together because we were busy picking up people, doing this, doing that. So we always drove separately to church. It was one time where we had all of the sound equipment for the whole church, you know, so we had that filling our little Yaris. So we had no choice but to drive 2 cars. I was definitely more the person who got tired more quickly compared to my husband. My husband would stay there all night packing up the sound equipment, plus talking and fellowshipping with people. So that was another reason why I drove separately. I got to a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I worked in, you know, as a diagnostic sonographer in the hospital all day. I was exhausted by the end of the day with everything in the week, you know, working and then coming to church and getting there early and leaving late every single week. But then, like you said, it's like, you just can't figure it out, right? That's that whole sacred science that happens in high control groups. There's this right way to do it, but you can never really figure out how to do it. So you're always on a hamster wheel. So we're trying to prove that we're still servants, but also being challenged that we don't spend enough time together. Or why are you guys driving separately? That became something that we were kind of shamed for. Like, what are you doing? It's like, we're serving you. We don't know how to do this. Which one is it? You know, do we have to prove that we're outwardly focused, that we're serving? And especially, you know, it was 8 years into my marriage before we had children. So I especially felt the pressure to perform more, you know, to show up more. I didn't have a reason like other people. I could go into how that really didn't change after I had kids. But yeah, so it was just like you said, you are now just a working partnership, because now, yes, you don't run the risk of sexual immorality, but you run the risk of idolizing each other. So now there's this new fear. There's this new fear that's there. There's this new thing to be afraid that you'll become. So yeah, it just never stops. It never stops.
Yeah, and not only idolizing each other by like spending a lot of time together, but another phrase, I'm not sure if this is popular throughout the movement, but again, at least in Hampton Roads, and I feel like the ACR, our region of churches up kind of like the East Coast, is being sentimental. And basically, it's kind of what I described about how Horace felt about me, that you just like a person so darn much that you are not committed to calling out their every sin every time they sin, or making a huge deal out of it.
Girl.
Like certain things, yeah, of course, you know, they're big deals, but like not everything. So what was I gonna say? So yeah, just the whole thing of like, if you're in this marriage and then I guess the leaders feel some sort of way about a character flaw of you or your spouse. And if you as the spouse are not as indignant as the leader, and you're not like having talks with them and suggesting that you guys should fast, and, you know, having special devotionals and quiet times in the Bible with him and for him, or the husband for you as the wife, then like you idolize them, and you're not viewing them with sober judgment. And are you really focused on making sure that they make it to heaven? And it's you don't want to be worldly in your relationship. And it just kind of like, instead of you guys being a soft place to land for each other or talk things out, you become fearful of being scrutinized in your own home by this person that you've chosen to marry. And so again, it's very tricky, kind of like the whole "we are not the only church" thing. Like I've heard it said, you are not your spouse's discipler. That is not your role. You encourage and you let, so-and-so handle it and you pray for them. That is what is said.
Yeah.
But what is acted upon and what is implied and what is followed up on, and then it's like this delicate dance that, like, you can't nag. If you're the woman, you can't nag and you can't be critical. And if you're the man, you can't be too, like, controlling or overbearing. But if you're not indignant enough and if you're not holding them accountable enough, then what are you doing? Don't be, was it Ananias and Sapphira?
Oh, yeah.
Or were those the good ones?
No,
that was Priscilla and Aquila. Yeah, so Ananias and Sapphira. Don't be them. You guys will drop dead. Don't hold each other's secrets. And so that adds a whole other element where you can't even truly enjoy your spouse.
Think about that. You were immediately introduced to the idea that you can just become Ananias and Sapphira. Think about the anxiety that brings about in a marriage. Am I supporting my wife in sin? Am I supporting my husband in sin? You become suspicious of one another, right? Because on the one hand, I love this person and I want to enjoy a life with them, but am I enjoying it too much? Ananias and Sapphira. Are we having too much fun? Ananias and Sapphira. I need to find something to call out. I can't really relax around you because if I relax too much, I might not pick up on some crazy stuff you're doing. Ananias and Sapphira. Priscilla and Aquila, what did they do? They were out together preaching the word, and it's like they weren't having fun. They weren't on vacation. That's not what they did. That's probably what Ananias and Sapphira did. But that it wasn't specifically said, but that's how you feel. So much of our marriage in particular was just being afraid to enjoy one another, being suspicious of one another. One of the things that, now that we have left ICOC, one of the things we enjoy the most is just talking to each other, just sitting down and talking to each other without the barriers, without the fear. And it was my husband who really felt it. Like, I can just relax and accept you for who you are. I can trust you because, and I, don't know if you want to talk about this later, if you have some stuff to share, but particularly because it is a patriarchal system, right? Borderline, or maybe not even borderline, but misogynistic system. There's this concept that, of course, men lead the family, but you have to make sure that your wife isn't overthrowing the kingdom. Make sure your wife isn't overthrowing the kingdom. Make sure you're still in charge. Odell was telling me how there's always like jokes about strong-willed woman. And I'm definitely one of those people who was considered more of a strong-willed woman, right? So Odell was always being challenged with how strong he was being with me, right? How much of more of a heavy-handed leader he was. I was always told to tone it down. You have to be more gracious. You have to be able to win him over without words, right? That scripture.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Or the study of, was it Abigail? And her husband, she was Abigail. What was her husband's name? Nabal or something? Yeah. And she was just so meek, but still wise. And she did what she needed to do, but she didn't really go against her husband. Yeah.
She totally did. That was some rewriting that they tried to do. She went against him for sure. She was wise, but no. You were actually not necessarily encouraged to be like her if you really think about what she did. Because that was somebody who I thought was a hero, but her story gets rewritten in different ways. But anyway, just that's a side thing. But now it's just that we just get to accept each other who we are. Odell's like, I am not a forceful guy. I'm a happy guy. I like to have fun. I like to do things that are relaxing. I am naturally more ambitious. I am naturally more serious. And we're realizing these are the things we like about each other. And we get to just relax and let each other be who we are and enjoy that, cheer each other on, and be proud, of who we are. And he gets to relax and just listen to me talk, listen to my ideas, specifically as a man, right? Listen to my ideas without this fearfulness of she's going to overthrow the throne, without this pressure of, is she saying something that I need to be, taking over right now? Is there any hints of anything that suggests that she's trying to lead? It's just, I get to enjoy a friendship with you. And our relationship has gotten so much deeper and stronger. There's been so much positive change in even our family dynamic as we both go through therapy and heal, and it's just been so great. So, yeah. So that fear of idolizing and me overthrowing a throne was actually preventing this,
Yeah, there's such a, what am I trying to say? Just this premise, right? That the men lead, the men are the head, that is it. And so much so that I saw a post from someone. There's a great Instagram account for people who are navigating kind of the complexities of, being a part of the ICOC organization or having left it. On Instagram, you can find them. It's at Wound of My People. But they have great Instagram stories. And one person was sharing their experience at a church conference in Dallas, Texas, where there were all these ministry staff women lined up on stage and pledging, saying, I will never say no to my husband. Ooh. And then everyone in the crowd cheering and yeah, we'll never say no to our husband. And the person who made the post was like, what is going on? It's just, I just feel like for a healthy boundary and communication sake, everyone should be able to say no to everyone. Everything doesn't have to be a yes all the time.
Yeah.
Even with my 4-year-old, I make sure he knows, if you don't like something, let me know, or I won't know.
Absolutely.
Not to do it. Some things are non-negotiable, you do have to brush your teeth, right. But if you don't like if I rub your hair this way, tell me. Yeah. And so just seeing that, these women are giving themselves less autonomy than I give my 4-year-old is concerning, and that is cheered on. But even beyond that bleeds into other things. So I've heard on multiple occasions that there have been women in, trigger warning, domestic violence situation. And they are discipled and told well, let me come over and help you clean your house. And let's come up with a schedule for how you can keep your house cleaner so he can feel more at peace. How often do you cook for him? Or, well, do you put on lipstick? Make yourself attractive and try not to be so disagreeable. Don't trigger him. Or how often are you guys being intimate? Because that could be a thing. Or if he's cheating, even offering that question. And what is going on? Yeah. I've been very fortunate that actually in a lot of the different discipling times my husband and I have been in, I don't know why this is the case. I don't know why. Maybe the Lord knew I just had it piled on so thick in other areas of my life, that I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
But honestly, I feel like Forrest had gotten discipled harder than me when we would bring forth our little squabbles.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I would get corrected or whatever, but I feel like a lot of times Forrest was held very, very accountable. Like, you are the husband, you need to do this, you need to love your wife, you know, whatever. But I've heard too many stories from too many people that I know personally where it has not been that way for them, or not been that way for women that they sat in on meetings with.
Oh, definitely.
And I'm not going to say, well, that was not my experience, so I don't, that can't be true. Like, I know that it seems like I am the exception and not the rule. So I'm grateful for that, but it is sad that I've heard of this happening so many times, that there's literal abuse or infidelity, and it is put on the woman to make the relationship work. And so from the pulpit, before anybody says anything, I've heard in multiple settings and venues, from Bible talk to Sunday church to conference, husbands, love your wives as Christ loves the church. Yes, that is what is said.
Yeah.
That's not what is always enforced.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I cannot say yes enough. I've heard from many sisters like, okay, no marriage is perfect, right? But there was substantial issues going on as a fault of the husband, right? And it was show him grace. He's working on it. He's doing the best he can. Focus on the good, you know, they're focused on the improvements. Or sometimes there was just no response at all when they were calling out for help. And then as soon as they can't take it anymore and they decide to either leave the marriage or leave the church, all of a sudden, everyone is up in arms. Everyone wants to meet. Everyone is calling because it's different. It's different for the woman. And many people have expressed this to me, you know, and that actually confirmed it more for them. Why is there this big uproar now that I have put my foot down and said I won't do this anymore? Now you have time. Now you're here, you know, and I think it goes back to an image, right? A lot of these husbands, because they are allowed to continue doing things because for some reason it's the wife's fault, can still show up, be Bible talk leaders, come to church happy. They don't really make the church look bad. But these wives who say, I'm leaving, or I'm leaving the church, now we need to do something about it. Now that affects our image. So now we'll address it. So I've heard that tons and tons of times. I had this one experience where someone witnessed a husband aggressively yelling at his wife to the point where it scared her. So of course she comes to me because she doesn't know who to tell it to. And I'm like, what? And she was like, it was scary. I'm concerned. Like we need to get somebody. We need to talk to someone to help this person. And I immediately went to a women's ministry leader because I thought this is huge. You know, we need to handle this right now. Someone needs to know. And the person was like, oh, this person told you? Well, I mean, they should talk. That's the first thing that was said. The person who told me about the other person, they said they should talk. Okay. Well, if this person is experiencing things that are hard as well, doesn't that actually make them more equipped to pick up on, you know, red flags? But I was like, all right. And then I was like, but still, they're telling me what they witnessed, and that sounds really bad. And she said, oh, well, we're already working with them on that. And it was just like this lack of, caring, or urgency that I thought should be there. And then she said to me, and sometimes she says things to provoke him.
Wow.
Uh-huh. And again, it was one of those moments.
Was this a man or a woman who said that to you?
Yeah. I just froze.
Who told you it was a man or a woman?
A woman.
That's gross.
Yes. Yes.
That's crazy. And that's a segue into something that I wanted to say, that in my 13-ish years from the campus ministry, being served by a lot of marrieds and being in different, having times in different households, and then in the singles, I'm not exposed to too many marrieds there, I guess, but in the teens and meeting different families, and then actually being in the married, I can say there were a lot of marriages that I looked at and was like, don't want that. Like in the church. And something that I meant to bring up earlier, because we talked about how marriages and relationships could be kept apart. We forgot to talk about how the ministry will like orchestrate certain people kind of getting together, or strongly suggest people getting together. And there's one person in particular that I remember was kind of being strongly urged to consider this guy, and she was praying so hard to like him, and would talk with the friend group so often about like, I'm giving it a shot, and they say he'll grow on me, and like all these different things. And now I look back and I'm like, or you just could have not liked him. Like you could have chosen someone else. But they got married. They seem happy. Like, I don't know the inner workings, but they seem fine. I'm not close to them. But just knowing that has happened. Even one of my best friends, and she's not married right now, but has had several times groups of like these pillar people, even if they're not on staff, like the important people, trying to pressure her into going on dates with these people and following up and getting dressed up and giving these guys a chance. And she had to tell them, like, leave me alone. I'm a grown woman. I don't like him.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, I went on this stupid little date. I gave him a shot. It's not happening. Get off my back. And if they they spiritualize that. Like, are you viewing him with a worldly lens or a godly lens or whatever? And I just say all of this to say that I don't know everybody's origin story.
Yeah.
But I wonder, between being put together when they didn't really want to be together, or being in a marriage and trained and conditioned that they have to spot out each other's sin, or that the husband has to keep the wife from overthrowing the kingdom, or they're both sleep deprived because they possibly have children and Bible talk and Bible studies and midweek service and Sunday service, and then possibly kids kingdom rotation, and then don't forget the leaders meeting afterward, and then all the Bible studies in between, and then they're all the things. Like, so when do you have time to foster romantic feelings? But I've just seen like lack of patience between husband and wife, lack of respect and empathy. So much I've seen like snarky sarcasm coming from the men, sometimes from the women, but women are really, really shamed for being critical or saying anything bad about their husband at all, especially in public. I think, who was it? Was it, sorry, I heard a noise. Somebody was stricken barren because they watched King David dance in the street, and they looked at him with a critical eye. And so the Lord made her barren. And that was a story that was used often to discourage women from being critical of the men. Or also the story of Miriam, Moses' sister, who I guess, tried to give advice or didn't think that Moses and Aaron's idea was the best idea. So she wasn't really going along with that. So she was critical. And so was she given leprosy and had to be separate from the camp for a while? And she couldn't be with the people because she was critical. So don't you dare. And this was not only for your husband, but for your Bible talk leader, for any man. Don't be critical of a man because you could be barren or you could have leprosy and be put outside of the camp.
Yes.
So you have that fear. Then you have to just completely surrender over to the husband for most everything, even though certain things may not be his strength. But by golly, if you just pray hard enough and encourage him enough and, provide him with enough orgasmic experiences and encourage him to go be with the other brothers who can build him up, then he can do anything. Women, we have the power to make our men feel like they can fly, or we can completely tear them down. You don't realize how much power you have over men. And it's like, okay, while yes, I think in general, man or woman, your spouse can either make you feel great or make you feel discouraged.
Yes.
Let's not put their every success and every failure on one person, whether husband or wife. That just feels a little far-fetched. Obviously, if it's an abusive and toxic environment where you're always bringing them down or you're always nitpicking them and humiliating them, but that's not what 98% of the women are doing.
No.
But that's how they're being treated. So anyway, back to the original point, they do all of this, even starting from the beginning, Asha, when you introduced purity culture. All of this is to set you up for the successful, otherworldly relationship that everybody in your neighborhood, they're going to watch you and your husband interact in the 20 seconds it takes to go in your house and say, oh my gosh, they have the love of Christ. They love each other so much. That's what they're aiming for. But when you really get to see inside so many of these marriages,
no,
it's not great. That's all I'm going to say. I don't know if you want to share more details, but I'm not going to touch
it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's just a lot of that. I don't know.
I will say that it's so pervasive that when our friend group found each other, and we started really transforming from just a book club into a friend group, one thing I think everybody has said at some point in time is, it's so refreshing to hear that you and your husband like each other.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's so refreshing to hear that you guys had a healthy disagreement, but you guys still respect each other. Or it's so nice to feel like I can talk about the nice thing that my husband did for me without feeling like you guys are going to feel jealous or, whatever. So I think that speaks to the type of environment we were in, that when we came together and started sharing more about our marriages and things like that, that we were like, I love that for you.
Yeah, I love that for you, right? It's this is a good thing. I love how your husband loves to listen to you. And take what you say into consideration. We don't have to feel guilty about that right now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so funny. Okay, obviously, if you can't pick up from this conversation, I absolutely adore my husband. Okay?
Yes.
That's the caveat. But it's so transparent, the type of relationship that we have, that when I'm kind of venting and letting off steam to Asha, she's like, well, we know that Horace is a good man. I think you guys are going to work through this because, he may have said that, but
Support your
She's
emotions.
reminding me.
Yes.
She's reminding me, like, you have a good one. Whereas in some of those other conversations with other people, it's kind of like you're thinking, how do I tell you that this is toxic without telling you this is toxic?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
that is something.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really have a smooth segue. We can just segue to talking about kids.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, kids. Yes.
So point A under children is families are strongly encouraged to have children. So much so that members of the church will use guilt and shaming tactics to encourage you towards that end. Asha.
Mm-hmm. So this is pressure that I felt a lot. Like I said, me and my husband were married for 8 years before deciding to have kids. And a lot of that decision came from me feeling that something was wrong with me for not wanting to, right? And like I said, I've always had this husband who just loves me, right? He's just happy-go-lucky, no pressure. And he didn't actually feel like, yeah, we really want kids. You know, he was like, whatever we decide, we're good. So I kind of was set up. In my childhood, I felt like I didn't really have one. I was responsible for a lot of things that I felt like were just not supposed to be my responsibility. I had 3 younger siblings who were 8, 9, and 10 years younger than me. And a lot of my job was taking care of them, starting at age 12 is when it started, that I started taking on the role of actually, taking care of them, the day-to-day task, if I went somewhere, they had to go too. I couldn't go anywhere with my friends until I cooked dinner for them and made sure they were squared away. Like that was a big part of just my childhood. I didn't do very much. I was a part of band at one point. I did that for 2 years, but other than that, I got lucky with that. I felt very exhausted, almost like I don't have energy. I don't have the stamina to be a parent. In my mind, I was going to actually live my life and be free as an adult, since I didn't experience it as a teenager. I fully understood that being a parent was very hard, and it just wasn't necessarily practical for me. And so you start to pick up really quickly that a lot of the married's lessons are for mothers, if you're a woman, right? It's all about motherhood, having children. Of course, we were asked the question a lot, are you guys going to have kids? Why not? Whenever I showed up somewhere, someone was, depending on what I was wearing, they were like, oh, are you pregnant? Are you pregnant? And so it became very clear that this was really important to people who I really loved and admired. At one point, jokingly said to some other people that I'm close with, like, they told me, so I think Glenn's going to have kids. Are they okay? Saying, are they okay, just really struck me, because I started to feel very insecure about this. I thought that it was okay. I thought it was a choice that I could make. But I started to feel very insecure about it because it's always insinuated, when are you going to have kids? I remember people would say, well, nobody's pressuring you. It's okay if you don't want to have kids. But I think that, when you have kids, it really helps you to be less selfish. Now, selfishness is a trigger word for me, right? It was something that was used on me a lot growing up to keep me working toward not being called that, right? If I did anything that made me happy, it was attached to selfishness. So becoming a part of this church and the whole concept of denying self made complete sense. I can do that. I've always denied myself, but at least here I'll get some credit for it, right? So terms about selfishness and learning how to serve better were used. So we're not pressuring you, but I'm saying that people who become mothers become better at this. So when you're in a system where it's a productivity, shame, guilt system, and I'm highly sensitive to that, I'm like, oh, I have some demerits against me that I didn't know about, that I've just been made aware of because of this not becoming a parent thing. I remember being at a sister's house and somehow the topic of being a parent came up again. And I was like, is it really that bad if I don't become a parent? And they were like, no, of course not. But, it just helps you to be more mindful of people's needs. Like, I don't know if you noticed when I dropped this thing on the floor, this sister immediately went and picked it up, and you didn't. Just stuff like that. And I remember that because that just was really, I felt put on the spot. I felt embarrassed. Of course, I felt a lot of shame. Like, I didn't know you wanted me to pick it up. It was like right by your feet. She was like, yeah. And because, when you become a parent, you become better at that stuff. And I just was like, okay. So it was never like you need to have kids, but it's all these subtle ways, that it would make you a better person. And so being in this environment, being very vulnerable, I was like, okay, I think this is something I want to consider. I remember having a conversation with a sister and she was like, again, here's this concept. It's okay if you don't want to be a mom, but why don't you want to be a mom? And I listed off all the different reasons. And all of my reasons had to do with, it's not practical. I don't know if I have the energy. I don't know if I have the stamina. I kind of just want to be free now. I've had a lot of trauma, a lot of anxiety that still follows me. I don't know if I'm going to be a good mom because of all of these things. The world is a scary place. How am I going to protect these children? I don't know that I can. And that scares the mess out of me, So she was like, so what you're saying is all of your reasons for not wanting to be a mom stem from fear. And I was just like, I didn't think that's necessarily what I said, but I guess. And then we were looking at, scriptures, about do not be afraid, love drives out fear. So you really need to consider what you're doing if you're making decisions out of fear. So it was spiritualized. And it got into my head that I am making this out of fear. God does not want us making decisions out of fear. Am I really trusting in God? Because God is love. Love drives out fear. Like, what am I doing? I started to really question myself. I just never felt like it's okay. And so, of course, I was like, I'm going to go ahead and have children because I don't want to make a decision out of fear because I may regret it later. And it's this whole concept of abandoning who you know you are, abandoning what you know is true for you, abandoning your personality. And once again, before anyone says anything, no one told me I had to have kids, but it is heavily implied, heavily implied. And if you don't think so, I would challenge you to consider if you are not being honest with yourself. And I remember saying, okay, I'm going to have kids because at the end of the day, I'm married to Odell. Odell is amazing. And if I lose my mind, at least they'll have him as a dad. And then I said, and because he's so amazing, who am I to deny a child of having him as a father? Which also points to now I'm making decisions out of guilt. But no one pointed that out, right? So now I'm making decisions, and I'm almost in tears about it, making decisions out of guilt and shame. And I just want to encourage anybody, if you're making a decision, check if there's guilt and shame in it, because those are the only decisions that you'll regret. You'll look back and think, I shouldn't have done that. don't make any decisions out of guilt, fear, not fear, like, yes, fear, real fear and shame, but guilt and shame are huge. They are huge. I think that some fears are valid. They are valid. They are rational. If you know something about yourself and you think this is a valid reason not to put myself in this position, then listen to yourself. You know what's going on. Now, my kids are amazing. I have been blessed with the sweetest children you ever want to meet. They're very smart, they're very intelligent, but I do at times feel like I feel shame and guilt that they have this mother who is borderline agoraphobic, anxious all the time, has lots of insomnia because all I do is watch them sleep every night. I can't relax. I barely want to leave the house with them because I'm afraid someone's going to take them. I'm afraid something bad is going to happen to them. I'm afraid they're going to get the coronavirus and their immune system's going to just die. I'm afraid that we'll be at a playground and then there will be some shooter. These are the things that fill my mind all the time, the things I knew were there. Not to mention that my energy is just very, very low, which I already knew. So yeah, that's something that I deal with every day. I deal with a lot of I'm trying to find a different word that's not hatred, but hatred of myself for just all the ways in which my decision, I let what I knew about myself and my decision making abilities get overridden for fear of acceptance. But that's what it is to be vulnerable and to be in a guilt shame cycle. So yes, there is a lot of pressure for parenthood. And then on top of that, what parenthood should look like. And I have to say that my children are a big reason why I stopped making excuses or defending or coming up with ways to rationalize a lot of my cognitive dissonance, right? I thought about the ways in which I felt my autonomy was taken, the ways that my personality was gone, and that I was looking at other people to figure out, am I okay? Am I okay? And I look at my children and I see their little personalities, come out and come through. And I thought about someone doing that to them. And I was like, no, no, they are fine. They are okay. I want them to be who they are. I don't want them to think that who they are is evil, that who they are is bad, that their personality is just steeped in sin. I want to teach them about God, but that God made them unique for a reason, that everything they love, everything they like is not something that they should fear will become an idol in their life, but that these are their gifts. These are their God-given interests. I don't want them living in fear and shame. I don't want it. And the only person who can stop that and prevent that is me, So yeah, my kids have helped me so much, but it's hard. It's a daily struggle because of all the anxieties and all of the trauma that I carry, and me worrying about making sure that they, have a loving parent who is here for them, which is very hard. Now, was I right about Odell being the best dad ever? Yes. I have never been more right about anything in my life. And so my kids are happy. A lot of that is because I have the best husband who supports me, who supports them, and he makes it possible for us to, have just this loving environment. And I'm so, so grateful. But I definitely have some inner turmoil that goes on a lot. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, added to that is the pressure. Like once you have children, it's a whole other area where you open yourself up for scrutiny and unsolicited advice. And so I was very fortunate that the pandemic started right as my son was turning 2. So it's like just around the time where he's transitioning from just this adorable tiny human that I'm keeping alive
Yeah.
to now someone who's saying no or running around or, finding his voice and
Yeah.
has to be kind of like shaped and molded, right? Like you start introducing the word no. Don't come for me in the comments. I know how some people feel about the word no. But you guys know what I'm talking about. Introducing boundaries and guidelines and all of that in whatever way you as a family decide to do it. And so with that, you are kind of introduced to this concept of like, you have to train your child or they will grow up to be unrighteous.
Yeah.
Which equates to them going to hell. Yeah. And then it will be because you as a parent failed to provide a solid foundation. And so, again, I've heard when, people are older and their children are like teenagers or adults, and then the advice and the discipling is different. Like all you can do is pray and you set the foundation, but you have to let go and let God, and everyone has their own journey. Like that's the advice and the comfort you get when they're out of the house. When they're in your house, it's very much you are responsible for making sure they're at church. You are responsible for training them. You are responsible for explaining and modeling what discipline is. Like, are you having family devotionals? Are you dedicated to this? Are they every week? And again, I'm very fortunate that church shut down right as my son was entering this stage. And my husband and I were just starting to have to navigate what this discipline looked like because he was so young. But I've seen it. I have seen it with so many families. And I've heard the lessons preached and I've seen the books that were suggested and all these things. And there's just so much weight that comes with it. And even I know in our friend group, some of our friends have shared about kind of this, it's like embarrassing and shameful, but then also confusing when you're like at church or a Bible talk and your young child does something. And I guess then as the mother didn't respond quick enough, or whichever way they were addressing it, a bystander did not approve. And said bystander, who is either older or more experienced, or maybe has a higher leadership status, steps in and begins to discipline the child. Like either before the mother can start or just cuts the mother off and begins to just discipline the child.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I never had to experience that. And the only thing that I'll say I did experience one time, and I have a little bit of grace because I think this is new territory that we're entering as a society. My son did not want to hug somebody as they were leaving Bible talk. Now, there's context. There's context, okay? Because I was kind of urging him to give the hug. Now, I'm huge on boundaries. I'm huge on safety. I'm huge on autonomy and choice and let the child choose if it's not harming anybody, right? But Black and brown culture, you show up. You greet people, especially your elders, and all of that. Like, and I have watched him interact with this person all night. Okay, this is not a matter of safety. They never went into a room together by themselves. He was never sitting on her lap. They were never that close for anything inappropriate to happen. He had hugged her and interacted with her before. Like, now he's just in some sort of toddler mood.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know my son is safe.
Yes.
So to me, my thought is, we're not going to be rude. Yeah. Like, again, I could see, you can tell I'm trying to cover all my bases for whatever trolls are coming in the comments. Like, I could see if we didn't know this person, I could see if they had interactions I didn't know about, or if he was acting funny, or if he was being weird earlier in the evening. Everything was fine. He just has a little attitude. Sir, we're going to be kind. We're going to be respectful. Mm-hmm. Give a hug. They're leaving. So she takes the opportunity in front of him, in front of everyone. No, you should not. It's okay. He doesn't have to hug me if he's not comfortable. He should really listen to his cues. First of all, I'm tired, and I want you all out of my house. It's late on a Friday night after a long work week, so I'm not going to take the time to do this. Second of all, there's like the shame and the guilt. Remember, I'm a people pleaser. So I'm like, well, this is awkward. Now I look like I don't care if my child gets molested. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to tell me through this subtle denial of a hug. Mm-hmm. Like, because I know that's where all this is coming from. Yeah. Like, it's in front of everybody. It's just weird. So that's the only thing that I can say I really experienced that one time. And I just kind of let it go. Yeah. And then luckily the pandemic happened and now I'm not a part of the church and it's fine. But I just have heard so many other stories of people being kind of embarrassed in that way, like having their parenting undermined.
Yeah. Another fear that I had, I remember being frantic one time when, I guess my daughter was around 2 years old, and I walked into leaders meeting or some meeting, and this day she just didn't want to say hi. She just didn't want to. And I was like, oh no, like my daughter is just very social. But this day she just clung to me and just stared at people, which is usually like, what's going on here? Is your daughter getting away with stuff? Are you not teaching her to be outwardly focused? Because you've got to teach your children to become this prototype of, extrovert, high energy. Somehow that's taught, right? I'm sorry, it's just, and I just was like, oh no. And I remember praying, like I prayed that my daughter like isn't like me, because you are under this impression that something is wrong with you, that you aren't naturally a certain way. Well, I wouldn't even say naturally, because I just thought this person was this way because they just love God more than me. That is actually their personality type, right? So I feel that I am failing at this producing a prototype, and I'm like, Jordan, like I'm frantic, like you gotta say hi, I'm pulling her to the side, like, let's try this again, and I keep bringing her back to say hi to this person, almost to prove to them that I'm working on my daughter. And it's another one of those things I hate myself for. It's another one of those things where I wake up at 3 a.m. like, ooh, why did you do that? Why are you so weird? But it was that hypervigilance. Now that I've brought this child into the world, I have to do it right. So no one will question my parenting,
Yeah, I've seen, oh, sorry.
Oh, no,
I was just going to say, I've seen other families, like kind of express that same sentiment of like, oh, and this will be like a five-year-old, and they're telling me, oh, we're working with her about being more hospitable and more welcoming on a regular basis, and like saying hi and giving all the hugs. And I know this sounds hypocritical because I just talked about my son giving a hug, but I feel like that's different. Like they've been here all night, you hug them to say hello, just give a hug to say bye. I'm talking about you have people in your home 3 or 4 nights a week because there's Bible talk and Bible studies and D group and all these things. And this child deserves a space to feel comfortable and feel at home. but they have to perform all the time. And they have to act excited that people are here. And now mommy and daddy's attention are divided. Or I have to stay up in my room and be quiet. Or like, I don't want to be around these people, but they're being forced, to act otherwise. And that if they're not this way, then you're right, they're not the prototype, they're not spiritual. You as a parent are not raising them in the way that they should go. Not to mention that children are also, from the time they're born, viewed as another route for evangelism. Like I remember my campus leader at the time saying, I love going on campus with my stroller, with my baby, because it's just a magnet for people. They come to me. Or I can share my faith with them and they're not rude to me because no one's afraid of a woman with a baby. And then as they grow, they talk about like evangelizing at the children's birthday parties, play dates, and going to the park. Are you meeting the moms there? Go trick-or-treating at Halloween and use this as an opportunity to evangelize. And then parents will brag about children sharing their faith. Which is an interesting idea. They say like the kids are so bold and they're so brave and they love God so much. And it's honestly just kind of like kids just like to talk and share what is a big part of their life. Like if you guys were really, really into Star Wars, I'm sure your child would go and share the good news of Star Wars with people. Because children just like to talk about what happens in their life all the time.
Exactly.
Like they would just walk up to a stranger. If you guys were at a Star Wars movie night every Friday, where there was snacks and their best friends, and they got to sing Star Wars songs, I'm sure they would say to the cashier, especially if they watched you invite people to Star Wars party every Friday, they would say to the cashier, I can't wait to go to Star Wars party. Do you want to come? And we have da-da-da-da-da and this and that. Like, it has nothing to do with them being filled with the love of Jesus. This is coming from someone who's worked in early education since 2012. Like, obviously, do I think children are innocent and have hearts full of love? And if they believe that this is a place where people come to feel love and learn about God who loves them, that they would want to share that with people? Yes, I'm not taking that away. I'm just saying, like, let's not exploit kids for being kids and put them on this pedestal of being so spiritual and bold. Like, it's weird. And then using that for them and then pressuring them as they enter like middle school to hold up that facade and then feel shame if they want to wear a V-neck, or if their friend shared a Cardi B song with them. Like, do I personally want my son listening to unedited Cardi B at 10 years old? No, not necessarily. But if he does, and who knows if Cardi will even still be hot, it'll be somebody new. But if he does, which I anticipate he will, because kids share everything, and I'm going to shame him and make him feel like he's unclean and dirty and tainted, and now it's going to be so hard for him to ever be righteous and pure and faithful to his future partner. Like, and put all that added pressure on there, like, I feel so bad for these kids.
And it's funny, it's like, when you say, that is so weird, you know, a lot of stuff is weird, right? But it makes sense, again, when you're in a guilt, shame, productivity cycle, and you are used to being compared to someone else who is doing more. So you're always trying to bring up your list of the cool things you're doing that proves how devoted you are, right? You have to demonstrate. So like you said, kids are going to be talking about whatever is big in their life right now. So a kid sharing their faith, right, proves that that's what you talk to your kid about all the time. It's another piece of evidence, physical evidence of your devotion to the things we think are important. And you want to be that one that the leadership brings up on the pulpit this week, or the one they bring up who's doing so much in leaders meeting this week. So many weird things are done in the name of acceptance, approval, just getting that pat on the back, because that is such a big part of the power dynamic in this environment, you know?
So, yeah. And so thinking about getting the pat on the back and the approval, it makes me think back to when we were talking about like dating and marriage and liking your significant other too much. I've heard it said by like lead evangelists and their wives that when people brag about their children and they talk a lot about their children's accomplishments, that they're actually bragging about themselves. And that it's another way for their arrogance to be displayed. And so, yeah, I feel like that's another thing, right? It's kind of this tightrope of like, well, I love my child and I'm proud of my child and I want people to know I'm proud of my child, but I can't share that I'm too proud of my child or else it's going to come across like I think I'm doing such a great job and I'm bragging on myself. It's just kind of like,
yeah,
there's this immense pressure in every single aspect of everything you do.
Yes. That's it. Pressure in everything you do. And you know how we talked about that idolatry being brought up as a form of fear mongering in marriage? Oh, it's brought up with your children. Don't idolize your children, you know?
Yeah.
Are you idolizing?
And don't be sentimental.
Huh?
And don't be sentimental.
And don't be sentimental. That child does, you know, I hear a lot of people say your child doesn't belong to you, they belong to God. Okay, I get it. But in this context, is used to discourage you from a certain level of closeness, a certain level of being protective over your child, from caring too much. So many parents I can see get shamed for what appears to just be caring too much. You're trying to protect your child. You're trying to protect them from God when you just won't let just anyone say anything to them, you know? That starts early too. So yeah, you are fearful of how much you care about your kids because you're being sentimental. You're letting them win. That's a huge thing. Don't let your child win. Just phrases that are used. Like, what does that mean? But you know what it means. You know, you have to, like we did in our dating relationship, show a bit of restraint. I'm not too into this kid. They don't control me. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
There was this one women's ministry leader, and my son actually was kind of mentoring her son for a while. And
you mean your husband was mentoring?
Yes. Not my son. My son, pre-conception, was already so spiritual. My husband was kind of mentoring, and they would come, my husband and this, you know, young man would come from hanging out, having a good time, chill, casual, you know, whatever, and pull up to the house to drop him off, and right in front of her son would ask my husband, did you see anything in his character I need to work on? How did it go? Do you have any concerns? And my husband had to be like, and of course he didn't say it right in front of him, but later was like, that's not encouraging. That's not appropriate. That's not how you build trust. That he's not going to trust anybody if he thinks or now knows that afterwards you're asking for the lowdown on everything and his every move is being watched and picked apart. Like, Oh my gosh.
But again, that's not abnormal to that sister because that is the environment. You know,
Yeah, you're right.
I feel like Horace was just didn't get how this all worked. You know, he was all like trying to bring in a healthy perspective, but it is that type of environment, though. She's thinking my son better get used to this. My son better get used to being watched and picked apart. You know, one day he might be, you know, a leader on staff and you sit in these D groups and it might happen. You know, it happens
Yeah.
or it happens to her. I think too, there's this thing where I think we acknowledge it. A lot of the women get, you know, harsher treatment, higher expectations for women in this fellowship. But then there are people who fit the prototype who get what I like to call, this is so corny, Lord have mercy, kingdom privilege, where they aren't as, they don't get as strict discipling. I'm trying to find a different word than discipling, right? Because that's a part of that loaded language that only people in ICOC understand. But
like the correction and the criticism.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we got that in our dating because our schedules were so full. Our disciplers told us that we could have dates by ourselves with no double. So we could see each other, but they said don't tell anybody because everybody can't handle that kind of privilege.
And see, I was right. I was like, I think Horace was one of those people who went through his whole time here with kingdom privilege. And there's a lot of people with that, you know, who are just in here and they're just shocked. Like he's shocked that sister said that. She was told to say that. I was a teen worker for 10 years, okay? These are things that are encouraged to do. Get your team ready. This is what it's like. They need to be called to this higher standard now. You don't protect them. And Horace is over here talking about something. He's not going to trust. You have to protect us. She probably was confused. Like, wait a minute. That makes sense. Now she doesn't know why she did what she did. But these are things that are encouraged, you know, and it's just funny to me. I'm like, yeah, Horace just had kind of a different experience, which is, you know, why he's so vocal now. He just says things. He's like, this is what's good. You know, people were like subtly hinting to him. I don't know if Nikita is, you know, at the caliber. And he's like, no, I just like her. Like he or maybe he's just oblivious, right? I don't know. I don't know. But I just want to point out, you know, these things are weird, but not in the confines of this system, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, literally at our wedding, like in the ceremony, the evangelist who performed our wedding said something to the effect of like, Horace, it would take a man with the likes of you to be able to lead or handle a woman like Nikita or something like that. And so at the time, it's all fun and jokes. Ha ha ha, Nikita's feisty or, you know, whatever. But looking back, it's like, sir, what? But yeah, I asked him actually today, getting ready for this conversation, because you had shared with me before about what Odell said about like, you know, beware the strong-willed women. And I was like, Horace, did anybody ever say anything like that to you? And at first he was like, I don't think so. But then he said, because he grew up with a lot of strong women in his life, like very strong, accomplished, high-functioning women. And so that was like the norm for him. And so he's like, I don't know. I mean, if they did, I probably just didn't internalize it because that's weird. Like, what is that?
Yes, I bet that happened a lot. Just like, I don't know what that was, and I'll just go this way.
Yeah, so literally our dynamic is someone says something crazy to me, and I tell Horace, and he's like, I don't think they meant it like that. And then I have to like break it down. And he's like, I can see that. Or now it's getting better where I'll share something and he'll at least say like, Yeah, that definitely wasn't the best. So we've gotten somewhere. We've gotten somewhere where he's not like trying to convince me all the time to
Gotcha.
give the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
So but he is in his mind. He's like, "What's the problem?"
Yeah.
So which is good. I think we balance each other out because I'm
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
so far the other way that I need someone to bring me back. But then he's like never aware, and I'm like, London Bridge is falling down. Hmm, maybe I should take another route. Like,
Oh, I love it.
but
Love it.
yeah, it's crazy. But I can see that because I had someone to, or we had someone to babysit our son once, and I'm not opposed to hearing about my child. Again, I work in
Right.
early education. I know the importance of structure. I know the importance of knowing what's going on so you can address it and hold your child. Like, I'm not saying I don't want to hear things, but I get the report back and it was just very in depth and quite lengthy and a bit more somber than I thought maybe
Mm.
was necessarily warranted. I was like, and so then I was kind of in my head for a little bit, like, oh, and I got over it. Obviously, enough that I don't even really remember what was said, but I can see how that's the type of culture that is
Yes.
encouraged because this person thought, I guess, it was her duty, even though I think maybe I asked, how did things go? Is there anything I
Yeah.
need to know? Or something vague like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the response I got was like, okay, so this is
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
All right. So I can see that.
Mm-hmm. Big part of that.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think before we wrap it up with the last question, was there anything you wanted to circle back and add that maybe we missed?
Hmm. No, not that I can think of. It's probably, well, the one thing I was thinking about is just going back to the purity culture. A lot of it is it being placed onto you, right? But then in certain roles in, churches, you then have to become the enforcer. And that's a whole other pressure in and of itself that stuff has sat wrong with me over the years. I remember, especially as a teen leader, because I brought up being a teen leader, right? Your job, a big part of your job is to police these young girls and what they're wearing. It's just a never ending thing to constantly, you're a good teen leader. If you can keep your girls in line, if they show up modest, if are you talking to them about this? Are you helping them with this? And it was just overwhelming. It was a lot. I did not like it. But I remember having this memory. One of the things, as you come out of this system, you look back at things and you don't feel good about it. And there's probably more stories that should be on the forefront of my mind, but it's like you feel a sense of embarrassment if you can't hold your people to a certain standard because you're trained to do that. A good leader in this system make sure that their people show up to everything, they do all the things, and they look a certain way, because if not, you're kind of questioned. And I remember a teen I was working with wearing what I felt like was a shorter skirt. And this was during a teen service. And they had a role in the teen service to go on stage. And I immediately felt all this shame and guilt. Like, that's my teen, the dress is short. I know that I'm going to be called to say something. I've got to do something. And I told her, but it's right before the service, right? So it probably is not, it's nothing she can do about it at this point, except go on stage and feel this shame that I've now placed onto her. And that stuck with me for years. And, after I left ICOC and all these things started coming to the forefront of my mind, there were a few things I wanted to apologize to her for. It was like two things, and then that was one of them. And she was like, I don't really remember that first thing, but the short dress thing and going on stage, she was like, I still think about that to this day. That was probably 10 years ago. This is the damage that purity culture can have. She was like, the embarrassment I felt, the feeling like I had let you down, the, wondering if that's what everyone was thinking about while I was on stage. It has stuck with me to this day. And I'm like, I am so sorry. She was so gracious by saying, it was the culture. It was a very strict purity culture. And she noticed that it was actually, stricter for different body types for different people. That's a big thing that we, was in our notes. That is a huge thing there as well. But I just was like, but I am so sorry. So these things that seem weird, these things are just like, this isn't helpful. In the confines of this shame guilt cycle, this intense purity culture, it just made sense. And it wasn't until after that I really was like, wow, if that were me, this is something that would sit with me. And it broke my heart to hear that she was like, yeah, it did. I still think, something will come up, a certain, temperature, a certain day that reminds me of that day. And that memory is there. Because of the shame, because of the guilt, because of always looking back and thinking about what happened. It's the same thing that happened, with me and the spaghetti straps. These things stick with you. And that's what makes it toxic. Just wanted to revisit that. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Something that I forgot to mention was just this huge unnecessary divide between genders. That like you can't have too close of a platonic relationship with someone of the opposite gender, or even like normal physical contact. So one thing that I'll give you an example of what I mean. There's this one guy, good friend, and he would give so many rides, like to me and other people from the college campus I was on when we didn't have cars, which was the majority of my college experience. Rides all the time, there for Bible talks, see him at like family night events, like hang out, our Friday night devotionals and church. Like I'm with this man almost every single day. Obviously not just him, but we're around each other often, so often. So at this point, he's literally like my brother. So we go to campus leader's house. We're there for some sort of meeting. Who knows what it was? There was always something. I'm tired because I'm always tired. And I'm sitting beside him on the couch, and I just kind of lean my head on his arm while we're waiting for things to get started. Like my leg is not on him, my hands are not on him, like nothing. I'm just like this, waiting for things to start. I don't even know where our legs touching. I don't like, and out comes the campus ministry leader, the wife, and she said something to the effect of like, don't do that, that's weird, or that looks weird. Weird was one of her words. Like if she didn't like something, or if it was not to her standard or whatever, it was just weird. And so she basically said that me leaning on him was weird, implying that like, it's not above reproach, or it's too much contact. So that's one example. Then the way the system is set up is like, if you meet a guy at an event, of course, a member of a church, maybe from somewhere else, you guys exchange numbers. You may talk on the phone once or twice. You may want to keep in touch, even if you don't like him like that. The thought is, if you continue to call or text him, he's going to think you are pursuing him and you are trying to make a romantic relationship happen. And so that was always awkward and uncomfortable, because some guys I was like, I just want to be your friend. I wouldn't tell them that because that's uncomfortable for me at the time, being a younger woman, and not in an environment that fosters healthy dialogue in this way. But there were so many friendships that I could have had that I didn't, because I was afraid of looking like I was being the pursuer or the aggressor, if you will. So And then last example, in marriage, definitely when you're married, it's almost like you can't even talk to someone of the opposite gender without your spouse being there. And so an example of this, when I'm close to being on my way out of the church, I leave in like February or March of 2021. So January 6th happens, the insurrection. And I text the head evangelist and an elder and maybe one other brother leader, I'm not sure. But I text them because I'm like, I'm going straight to the source. Y'all done fumbled the ball too many times. I'm hoping, things will get to you. I'm just going straight. And I basically send the message like, hey, this happened today, because it happened on a Wednesday. I remember it happened on a Wednesday because I texted them and said, this is happening. Not sure if you've seen the news. You guys need to address this at church tonight. If you don't, people are not going to be happy. Just putting a bug in your ear. And so I sent that to a couple of other people that I see as peers. Like, hey, I sent this to some of the leaders. I said this to so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. Here's to hoping it goes well. One of them, a married woman who has been like a mentor, texts me back and basically disciples me and says, I think that text should have come from your husband. I don't think that you should have texted these men about this. And so that was the response. I don't even know if I responded to her, but then it's interesting because a couple of weeks later, we had was it the Unity Task Force meeting? Some sort of meeting where the topic was brought up. And then she texts me offline and says, I'm so grateful you sent that text message to them. I don't know if I responded to that one either. I was like,
the same person.
I cannot. Yeah, the same person. So first it's don't text the married men, even though it was just church business. I don't know. And then now that it's being brought up and we see the fallout, I'm so glad you texted them. So
yeah. I don't even want to talk about all the times that I got challenged for saying something to brothers about something I disagree with, Asha, you don't disciple the brothers. Get told that a lot.
Yeah. So, okay, well, the wrap-up question I thought would be a good summary, and you kind of alluded to this earlier. I don't know if you'll just re-say it or if there's something else, but what is a big change that's happened in your family or marriage since leaving the church that you're really happy about?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I alluded to it earlier that there's just this acceptance of who we are as humans, right? That my relationship there with my husband is not so guarded. There isn't this fear mongering. So many boundaries are down between us that I didn't even know were there. I didn't even know they were there. I've always felt like I was in a very safe relationship or marriage with my husband. He, like I said, he never did take on more of the patriarchal, misogynistic ways of being a leader in our home. One of the big reasons I picked him, he's amazing, but didn't even realize that there was still stuff there. And us being able to really discuss this, even discuss how purity culture has impacted even our intimacy. Didn't even know that was there, but it's just like this guard is down. And so that's a huge one. I think another thing is just simply not living in a ton of guilt and shame, just existing. One of the things that I brought up to my husband and he acknowledged as well, it was like, we just get to exist as a family, learn about God, grow without this frantic feeling that we need to be doing something. I said, even when we weren't doing something, you were thinking that you needed to be doing something. So even when you took a day off and you were relaxing, you weren't really relaxing. And you were wondering, I wonder what you think about me and what I think about you. Are we doing enough? And just not having that anymore. Just existing. It's still very hard. It's still very hard to do. It's just so funny how it creeps up, It could be the simplest thing. Like last night, we still have family nights. We had family night and we decided to order chicken wings, and I didn't like mine. And I had been thinking about Uno's Pizza. Uno's Pizza is like $40 for like a 10-inch. And I just was like, that's actually what I really want. And I hit the button on DoorDash and I thought my house was gonna blow up because when I spend extra money to get something I actually want, and it just creeps up on me in times where I don't expect it. But anyway, yeah, just existing, getting to know each other without shame and guilt, or just, am I producing enough? That's huge. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, I just love that we get to spend time together now. And that if something's coming up, I can ask Horace, like, if he can come home early, or if he would consider not going, or, something like that. But if I do that, it's not implied that I don't want him to serve God.
Yes.
Like, that me wanting to spend time with him and perhaps not go somewhere else is like, it's not me saying that he can't fulfill the Lord's mission for his life.
Yes.
Meanwhile, we both work full time. Okay. Mm-hmm. He gets home kind of late at night for us to be spending time together. And so if I can squeeze out something on a weeknight, or if I want to be a little bit selfish with the weekends, like, I feel like I'm totally entitled to that.
Yeah.
But before, I would have felt so guilty, and like I had no right to request his time.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I'm really grateful for that there's not this implied sinfulness of me just saying, like, hey, can you prioritize us?
Yes.
Can you prioritize me? And that being okay, that it's not a sin for me to want to sit on the couch or lay in the bed with my husband.
Yep.
And do nothing.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one? There was something else. Oh, I was thinking about it and I lost it. It was the time thing. I don't know. It's gone. It's gone. But I don't know. I love that I can love our marriage and it be okay. Oh, I know the other thing. Like you said, being able to accept who you are as a person.
Yeah.
That for now, any time that Horace and I differ, and I don't want to come on his side in regard to maybe how the house is run, it's not an indicator that I need to repent.
Yes.
And so specifically about the upkeep of the house.
Girl.
Horace is a super, super, super clean guy. And I am not. Like, I don't think I am like filthy, but I don't mind a house being lived in. And I will kind of clean as I go, or I will clean when I get a burst of energy to do some of it, or I'll do like piece by piece, like a little here, a little there. Like, our strategies are different. Like, I do enough to keep us afloat. Whereas Horace, when he takes time to clean, it's like a deep clean of everything. Yeah. And I have been discipled about like supporting my husband's mission for our home. And he wants it to look a certain way. And if I'm going to support his leadership, then I need to get on board with making sure the house looks a certain way.
Yeah.
And I took that to heart.
Yeah.
And I felt really bad. But now I have just come to realize I also work a full-time job. I am easily overstimulated with this tiny human that I'm trying to love and raise while breaking generational cycles and curses.
Yes.
Dealing with healing myself from so many different things. my son and I both have very like limited and specific diets that I have to prepare for. And then there's a whole mental load that goes with that.
Yeah.
I'm physically just tired more often. And this is just not a huge priority to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not.
Yeah.
And so if I know someone's coming over, sure, let's get it together. But his thing is, I just want it to be so if anybody could pop in at any time and then feel fine. And I'm like, well, they should have texted. They should have scheduled 2 weeks in advance. And so I get that. And when I do have the energy and I do have the time, I love to do that, to encourage him and support him. I know that's what he likes. Yeah. But to not have to feel like it is a sin.
Girl.
It is a cardinal flaw that my husband would have every right to leave me over.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that. That freedom to not feel shame every time I walk past dishes in the sink or laundry that's not folded, to feel like an absolute failure.
Yes.
So to feel free in my own house.
Yep.
So
this is crazy that you can say that, you know, that's a thing. But it is. Yeah.
It is. All right, guys. So hope you enjoyed this, I guess now third installment of our series. Go ahead and like if you liked it. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. But don't get crazy. We're watching and taking screenshots. So comment, you know, with your own discretion. What else? Go ahead and subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. We're going to talk about race and gender in the ICOC. We're going to talk about the Bible study series and what it's like being discipled as a member. We're going to talk about the college ministry, the teen ministry. I think we're going to even talk about the singles ministry now because some things have been brought up there. I think something that keeps coming up is the evangelism culture and like this whole mission that we have to save the world. That might have to be its own episode because it's so pervasive. Yeah. And yeah, that's it. So if you don't want to miss out, go ahead and subscribe, turn the notifications on. We love hearing from you. So if you want to submit your story or just even respond in a way that you're not comfortable doing in the comments, which is totally understandable, you can hit me up at hello@nikitalambert.com. And I think that is it. Also, due to some interactions and some things that happened in 2020, my Facebook circle is pretty tight-knit, pretty small. So if you are requesting me on Facebook, I do just ask that you send a little message sharing why. Otherwise, I'm not going to lie, I'm very suspicious. So I'm friendly, I'm open. I just want to know what you're doing there. That's all. But I think that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I look forward to sharing more of our experience with you and diving in more to really peel back the layers of this structure. All right. That's it, you guys. Till next time.